Welcome back to the Ember Report, where witches kick fascists in the teeth. I'm Lydian, the voice in the flame.
I'm Len, the Witch of the Crossroads.
And I'm Sebastian, the Sorcerer of Annihilation.
Here is where we raise the lantern for the exiles.
Keep the tea hot for the queers, the cunning folk, and the activists who never fit the mold.
This week we're joined by a very special guest and someone all of us here at the Ember Report hold in such high esteem. Rye of the Red Text is here with us at the news desk. Rye, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
Come on in, family.
The fire is kindled.
The Sabbath begins now. Today, we need to talk to you about the road ahead, what staying or leaving the United States might mean, and why the road is wild and wicked. 3 stories, 3 flames, each showing us where the fight burns.
Our first story, 1 dead and 2 missing after severe Alaska flooding, Coast Guard official says left absolute devastation. 1 person dead and 2 missing in western Alaska on Monday after the remnants of Typhoon Halong brought hurricane-force winds and ravaging storm surges and floodwaters over the weekend that swept some homes away, authorities said. More than 50 people had been rescued, some plucked from rooftops. And in addition to housing concerns, residents impacted by the system across the region reported power outages, a lack of running water, subsistence foods stocked in freezers ruined, and damage to home heating stoves. That damage could make the winter difficult in remote communities where people store food from hunting and fishing to help make it through the season.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency said it would end a program aimed at mitigating disaster risk. The decision is being challenged in court. A decision made initially to cut weather-related services by the Trump administration. Natural disasters happen, but stopping the one program that would assist in detection and warning folks is a way of controlling them, forcing them to stay in place regardless of what is coming. More people should be talking about this, as we saw something similar happen not too long ago in Texas with a flash flood.
The witch's verdict is clear. Mother Nature is warning us. Things are not okay right now, and things are scary. There are tornadoes, there are hurricanes, there are floods, and the empire at large wants to keep people stationary despite being stationary meaning death.
In our second story, Executive Order 14168. On January 20th of 2025, the U.S. President issued Executive Order 14168, defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government. The existing APIS regulatory language system used by Customs and Border Protection provides that M or F, M male, F female, sex markers are to be accepted in the transmission. However, Customs and Border Protection systems had previously accepted characters other than M or F without returning an error response or requiring resubmission. Effective July 14th, 2025, air carriers will have an informed compliance period of 90 days ending on October 14th, where values other than M or F in the sex field will not require resubmission. After the compliance period, APIS will begin returning a resubmit or X response, which indicates insufficient information requiring resubmission when values other than M or F are submitted in the sex field.
This is a blatant violation of Americans' human rights, especially queer and non-binary Americans. This is also, once again, Christian nationalism creeping its way into our lives and stealing our choices. We cannot be blind to the state and its plight to conform to its people. We know this is bullshit, and we know this is a distraction.
The witch's verdict is clear. When the Empire attempts to control its people by stealing their identity and sense of self, it's an attempt to break the people's will. Will we just stand idly by while our neighbors' rights and identities are slowly being eroded? That's the question you should be asking yourself today.
In our next story, Israel's exploding robots still terrorize Gaza neighborhoods. In Jabalia, Sheikh Radwan, Abu Iskandar, and beyond, people return to flattened neighborhoods and to the knowledge that, still among the rubble, some of the explosive robots that had caused it sat, silent and undetonated. The robots had become a common fear in northern Gaza since the Israeli army first used them on Jabalia refugee camp in May 2024. Their deployment hit an unprecedented pace leading up to the October ceasefire. The Euromed Human Rights Monitor noted in a report on September 1st, adding that they were used to destroy about 300 residential units daily in Gaza City and Jabalia. According to Euromed's report, these devices' indiscriminate, widespread destruction puts them under the category of prohibited arms, and their use in populated areas constitutes both a war crime and a crime against humanity. Neither the Israeli military nor the government have publicly acknowledged the use of these weapons, although some Israeli media outlets have reported on their use. The Israeli military has not responded to a request for comment from Al Jazeera. The effect doesn't end with the explosion, as Dr. Mohammed Abu Afash, director of the Palestinian Medical Relief Society in Gaza, explains. The explosive robots leave behind toxic vapors and gases, he says a powerful foul smell that lingers and causes people serious respiratory problems. These devices have been documented to be used since at least January of this year. During the January ceasefire, he added, the team found an unexploded robot in Tel El Zatar and was able to examine its contents.
Israel has already broken their peace agreement like we said they would. They continue to bombard the Palestinian people while claiming Hamas shot first. Governments around the world need to continually condemn Israel for their attacks on Gaza and the people of Palestine.
The witch's verdict is crystal clear. It was never about the hostages. With that said, it's time to widen the circle. Rai, our dear, dear guest. First off, it is such a pleasure to have you here today. And secondly, we have covered stories so far that cover a wide range of things that the administration at large is trying to do to keep the people stationary, right? So when we talk about the road ahead, right, what does the road ahead look like and why does that matter right now?
Oof, that's such a tough question because, I mean, just liberation in general could look like so many things. I mean, like individually, collectively. And I think it's hard to be fighting for liberation on both fronts at the same time, right? Because we're fighting for our own survival on a daily basis, especially for those of us who are possessing marginalized identities, whether that's as queer people, as people of color, especially with intersecting identities. And then on top of that, fighting for collective liberation, whether that's in our communities or on a more macro, wider scale. But it really just amassing together to come together to really fight for what matters, whether that's collective protests, peaceful protesting, voting, legislation, doing whatever we can on a local level or federal level, state level to institute change within the governments that we're unfortunately existing within. There's just so much that we can be doing in spite of everything that's happening to us. And I think what's most important is not letting everything that the current government is doing, like, demoralize us to a point that it makes us not want to continue forward, right? I think that's what they want to do. They want us to feel completely unmotivated, to not want to make change anymore. So really just continuing that fight is really what that road ahead looks like. Just continuing to push forward in spite of everything that's happening and working with one another and continuing to collectivize and create community and just push forward.
Excellent. I don't think I could have said it better myself. And that's the show, everybody. And cue music. No. I think you raise I don't think I know. You raise several very interesting points. And I think one of those is the sense of fostering community, right? I think now more than ever, especially given the rise of fascism and the fact that we have, a blatant disregard for people and their rights. It is now more than ever important, and I'm so sorry to all my introverted girlies out there. We need to be fostering community. Not just magical community per se. It needs to be authentic community where it's people that aren't magical even, keeping you grounded. It's people who are on a different path spiritually than you to keep you open. But a witch, we've been saying on the show, and I think we're going to keep saying it like beating this horse until it's past dead, that if you call yourself a witch, and I use the term witch broadly to cover everybody, like that's just me, right? But if you call yourself a witch, and you're not using what you got to protect the marginalized, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And we have to have that conversation, and we need to be more frank about that with our peers, I think, even, because I see a lot of witches who are very complacent right now when it comes to what's happening, and they're not taking the fact that we are like in the middle of a cold civil war. Like it's just begun. Like I say cold because like it's not an official, like people aren't actually going into battle together yet, but that's coming. That's coming. We need to be fostering a sense of community though. And that's all I have to say about that.
I have to agree completely. We all know my stance. It's time for sitting around and doing nothing, pretending that it's not happening, pretending that we aren't in this. I personally, I'm just going to say civil war because I wouldn't even refer to this as cold anymore. People have died. People are dying. And this is the time in which we need to be seeing action. I've said it before, just as we kind of just said earlier, like community and knowing what we can do as people, not even just practitioners, but just as people in general. It's not all on the front lines, but I do think we do need to see more action. Enough sitting around, enough ignoring things. It's time for you to get shit done, whether that is helping to organize these communities, whether that is helping with resources and information sharing, information gathering, whether that is you on the front lines throwing a Molotov. This is the time in which we need to see things, and we need to see that people have the space to have the community so that way they can do their part. I think that's also part of it, is that isolation is what's keeping people comfortable, even though it really isn't, and making it easier for us to just pretend that things aren't happening if we isolate ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've been talking about like the road ahead in general, and like, right, you listed all these good points, but where have we seen people planning out this type of road ahead in like, I would say history, or like, is there a time in particular that might come to mind where it's like, we've been here before?
I am horrible when it comes to like decades and histories and facts and things like that, but I mean, like the first thing that just came to mind was just like the civil rights movement, right? Like, I mean, that amassed so much collective movement, but obviously it was pushed back by the government because they saw what was happening. They assassinated Martin Luther King Jr. when he was assembling so many people towards collective liberation, towards racial unity, right? And so the government sees what people are capable of doing, and they are completely scared of the power that we're capable of amassing, and they will do whatever they have in their power to suppress that and oppress that. But it's clear from a historical standpoint that we, the people, have the power and capabilities to come together collectively to make change, and to come together across different political ideologies, different identities, like different whatever it may be, towards a single goal or towards multiple goals, whatever that may be. It's just a matter of what is it that we're working towards. I think I don't want to get too tangential, but I think I'd be remiss not to speak to just the way that the age of information and misinformation that we live in, especially with social media these days, has just created such a divide amongst everyone, which I think, not to sound all conspiracy theorist, but has just really played into what the government wants, is just divisiveness, which has just contributed to why it's been so difficult for us to come together and create movements like we've seen in the past. I mean, the closest I feel like we've gotten to that is maybe with like the Black Lives Matter movement during the pandemic. At least that's like the closest I can think of like collective movement getting as much traction as it has in recent years. Again, don't want to get too tangential, but I think historically it's been possible. I just think there's so many factors playing into it nowadays that just makes it so much more difficult. And again, there's just such a big sense of divisiveness, especially with like, Democrats versus Republicans, or just like, straight people versus queer people. Like there's just so many us versus them mentalities that are keeping us from being able to cross these bridges and divides and come together to really see what the main problem is, which is, the 1% and the people in power that are oppressing all of us and creating this divisiveness to begin with.
3 things. First, absolutely, we agree with all of that. Second, we welcome conspiracy theories, if only they are the third thing, which is that the water is turning the frickin' frogs gay. That's the only thing that we accept here on this show, is that water turns frogs gay. And we don't like queers on our show, actually. So if you're queer, I'm going to need you to get the fuck out. All right, that's all I got to say.
No, like, it's everything you said, Rye, is fantastic. I just want to make some notes there, too. You said some things, and I just are going to kind of contradict a point maybe earlier, but you brought up a statement, is that the government knows what we can do as people, right? It happened during the civil rights movement. They were scared, right? We need the government to be scared of us again. You've heard us say this multiple times on pretty much every episode. We, the people, have the power, okay? We, the people, have the power. What has happened is that the government has made it seem that the roles are reversed, right? Did we not just see how many people shut out for the No Kings protest? If all of us, the same amount of people who were out for this No Kings protest, took action and actually moved in a direction for there to be actual results, we would see things moving at a different pace much quicker. I will say, look, this is just me. I can't speak for anybody else, but this is just my own opinion. The time for peaceful protest is over. Open a history book. Peaceful protests don't get anything done. Okay?
We gotta throw bricks.
Open a history book. I've studied history. It's one of my minors. Open a history book and look at what has actually seen results. It has never been a peaceful protest. We are past that point because a peaceful protest has been ignored time after time and after time again, okay? Absolutely, start with a peaceful protest. Sometimes if, the people in power are reasonable, we will see some results. But how many times are you going to have a peaceful protest and still see nothing get done? Okay, it's time to bring it up a gear. Okay, I'm going to pull out fire. What are you going to pull out to get things done? And as practitioners, we have tools at our disposal. Okay, we should be using those in various ways. Again, you don't even have to go in person to these protests if you can't for whatever reason that might be to be there. But, there are other ways. As a practitioner, you have access to a number of malefic and baneful tools at your disposal that you can be using to help this movement, help this cause, help the people of the United States. Talking about the Black Lives Matters movement, we saw action there. Things got kind of crazy for a bit. They did, but things changed when things got crazy. like, newsflash, that's kind of how it went, if you were to break it down. And just thinking about the numbers that we had for the No Kings shows a lot, right? That really helped me personally see where the country is standing. Because as a person of color, as a queer individual, all these intersecting identities, getting to see how many people are serious about this is wonderful, but we need to see that seriousness be put into action.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. No, the government is scared when we organize. The government is scared when we break shit, and we need to start breaking more shit.
Big gay crew crime, absolutely.
Period.
I have a question for Rye again, obviously, because Rye is our beloved guest. This is a little more personal, so only share what you feel comfortable sharing. But when we think about the fight against fascism that we have going on right now, right? What spirits or guides or lessons that have you been learning that feel close to you right now? Like, what are your spirits saying to you, if you feel comfortable sharing?
For me, it's just been a daily battle of, like I think I mentioned earlier, just like surviving on a day-to-day basis for myself. Like I've been trying to fight that battle of not feeling demoralized and waking up and feeling depressed from reading the news and seeing what's happening on a collective basis. And so I've just been trying not to be overcome by depression and like doing my best to just show up every day for my friends and my family. And that's what they've just been telling me, of just like continue to persevere, like do your best. Just if all you can do is refill our altar waters and give us a couple prayers every day, then, obviously we're going to accept that. Like, so we know you're showing up. Yeah, we know you're showing up to the best that you possibly can do in this very moment. Like, I've had a pretty tumultuous, I'd say, last year and a half. So like my spiritual practice has been more on the back burner. So like I haven't been doing like a whole lot of magic. So my guides, my spirits, my ancestors, they know I've been doing the best I can when it comes to showing up for them. If it has just been refilling my water or their water and just giving prayers from time to time. But the times that I have been able to sit with them, I mean, like, they've just been reassuring me of just like, just show up how I can for community. Like, the neighborhood I live in is not necessarily liberal. It's not necessarily like super, super conservative, but it's definitely not liberal. Like, the business across the street from where I work, like, had a huge sign that said, like, honor Charlie Kirk. So, like, clearly it's not a very, like, liberal neighborhood that I live in or work in. So I don't feel like the most comfortable out here. But when I move back to a major city again, hopefully sometime next year, like, I want to be able to expand my spiritual services to giving, cleansings and workings past just my friends and family, right? Like, I want to be able to extend that part of myself to a larger part of the collective. But right now it's just been giving cleansings to myself, cleansings to, maybe my sister who I live with, or maybe to my best friend who lives right nearby. So they've just been, my spirits, have just been encouraging me to like show up in the best ways that I can for myself and for those around me. With Santa Muerte specifically, of course, she's encouraging me to like pray not just for those on my behalf and in my family and in my circle, but also like, she's the patron of the marginalized and the oppressed. And so of course I offer and extend my prayers to those who are being oppressed and to those who are marginalized and facing oppression, whether or not they're devotees of hers. And sometimes that also means like taking on, I don't want to say taking on anger, but like I sometimes feel anger on behalf of other people, because like I think of people who seek out her intercession who don't necessarily keep in mind the people who actually like devote themselves to her, or who like seek out her help like from a place of like actual like desperation and survival and need, but rather like just see her as like kind of like a miracle worker, and that can be really irritating, because like, again, like as a queer BIPOC, that goes to her because like I feel comforted by someone who accepts everyone. That can be like really like irksome. But on the flip side of that, like she also teaches like me, at least, like how to be like compassionate as well. But I feel like compassion and irritation / anger can exist simultaneously. So yeah, I've been receiving a lot of lessons from my guides of just how to survive on a day-to-day basis, how to show up for myself, my family, and the best I can show up for a community given my circumstances of where I'm living location wise, and I don't want to discount online community either. I think finding community in person is extremely valuable and extremely important, but not everyone has access to that or will ever really maybe ever have access to that. And so if all you can have access to is online community, I don't want to discredit the value that that can have, and that the action and collective liberation that online community can also have in the grand scheme of things as well when it comes to information sharing or activism or anything like that. So I think that can also be really important too, because I've gained so much community over the last few years just from my Instagram page and the people that I've met from being online. Like that was honestly my first like experience really having community for myself. So I just don't want to discredit that for anyone who feels like they don't have community outside of the online sphere.
Well, I mean, not to say anything, but the three of us, we all live together in the same house. So what the fuck are y'all doing? Get up and get together with the moving in with each other or something. No, all three of us live in completely different states. I would have to say, out of just personal experience, Lynn and Sebastian are probably some of my closest friends now. And we've never met, and we literally don't live anywhere near each other. But, like, you're right, online community is so important, just as much as physical community. But don't forget the physical if you can, because that's where you're going to get, like, the heart of the issues sometimes. Like, your local community, you're going to hear, like, we don't have enough, grocery stores. We have food deserts. It's like, oh, that's a problem. Let's figure that out. We have, a housing crisis. Well, who doesn't? But, like, it's the same thing. And the third thing, you heard it first here on the Ember Report. Rye will be offering services one day in the future, and y'all can get some wonderful things from the Misty Soul Mystic.
No, 1,000%. I mean, I think it's to touch point on like the fact that online community is super important. I mean, like we said, none of us have met each other. Me and Rye have been in contact for a while, but never met each other in person. We've all kind of been there for each other at various points in our lives when we're going through stuff. I also just like add like the fact that you said, Rye, that like your spirits are like specifically La Santa Muerte, the fact that she's like, hey, don't forget to like pray for the people who are like being detained, the people who are being targeted, the marginalized communities, the oppressed people. That's part of what I kind of say when like it's not all about being on the front lines as a practitioner. Like I said on the first episode I was on with Alligator Alcatraz, like if you work with Ganapati Ganesha, are you reciting his mantra and asking that be applied to a road opener, a blocker, a unblocker for the people who are being put in these camps, basically? Are you opening the roads for people to see safety? Are you opening the roads for people to have protection? Are you doing this protection work on these people? It's not something that necessarily has to be done daily, because like you said, we are all trying to survive on our own as well. I speak for myself as well when I say that it has been hard to kind of balance everything. As a practitioner who does offer services and like divination and whatnot, it can be hard to balance my mundane, my mortal day-to-day work life, my magical practice, both for myself and for others. As a devotee of La Santísima as well, I know she calls me to be there. I do feel that anger, I do feel that rage, but I also feel that compassion that kind of comes through. It's from my compassion that I have this anger for everyone, not towards the people, but towards those who are harming. It's not towards the oppressed, obviously, but I just want to clarify that like the compassion I have is where I can feel this anger of like the fact that this is happening in the first place in general, the fact that our people are being oppressed, marginalized, targeted, hurt in various ways is just something that I definitely am recognizing for myself as well. Also, go hot foot powder that store or whatever it is across the street from where you work.
I mean, who doesn't love a little hot foot powder? We were just talking before Rye hopped on about going to graveyards, and I mean, when in Rome.
Fuck shit up.
Fuck shit up. As long as you pay the spirits and be respectful. Listeners, that's
course.
like some of the free tips we give you here at the show, because, that's just what we do. But we should cast our thoughts to the future for a second, my friends, because we talk about the road ahead, right? We think about what it is, not just what that looks like for us, but like what that could look like as a collective. And right, you already touched on it, but like this is kind of to the group at large. If fascism were overcome tomorrow, right? We woke up and the bells were ringing and the people were celebrating and it was like Nazi Germany had been defeated all over again. What does liberation look like, though? What are the goals we should be working towards as a collective, do you think? Especially as witches. I want to bring it back to that because I think this show is a witch show for sure, and it's a show for everybody. But when we talk about what liberation looks like, when we talk about what the future looks like if fascism were overcome, there has to be certain things that reflects. And as I'm the only white person on the cast, I want to hear from the 3 BIPOC members what liberation would look like, true liberation would look like from fascism, and what witches should be doing. That way, we can start pointing our magics that way. Well, don't everybody jump up at once.
I'd love to hear from one of you two first.
Well, I think that I've seen some posts before and people talking about what would it look like if things all ended like immediately, like right this second. His first thought would be to celebrate, but not really, because we've lost a lot through this. So of course there's going to be a bit of grieving before we start rebuilding.
No, I really like that real quick. The idea that there has to be a collective grieving, There has to be a collective grieving. Because we have lost so much. It has been one of those things that when I listen to we'd have to grieve because we keep losing so much. And we have been confronted as a collective so much with death and destruction, and not in a good La Santissima way. This is awful and painful. And to say that we wouldn't need to grieve, Lynn, I think is a gross understatement. We would absolutely have to be like, we need a moment.
I think that these statements are very accurate. I mean, like thinking about grief and death, I think this is something that this kind of shows a bigger picture, honestly, though. Like America has a problem with death, grief, and mourning. This is something that I used to actually give talks about at universities. It's like the issues around that. Like Americans don't really know how to grieve or mourn properly. But with that being said, I do think that, as much as we would love to be like, oh my gosh, it's all over, we're free, we can celebrate, there's just been so much loss. There's been so much pain, so much suffering, and so much death, but the ones that we know and the ones that we don't know. But I think that is a part of change, that is a part of moving forward, that is a part of freedom, that is a part of all of that, is that we do have that moment, right? It is a process in which we go through this rite of passage, in anthropology that is broken up into 3 parts. You have the 3 steps, and the first one is that separation, then you have liminality, and then you have reintegration. So when you have that separation and that liminal space in which now we're neither where we want to be quite just yet. If we woke up and like fascists were gone and we were free and everything was back to it. Not back, but like we were in like this utopia, is that like we can't get to that utopia part quite just yet. Okay, we can't skip an important part of the process, which is that grief and mourning, which is that part in which we are in that liminality, right? The separation is all of our rights are taken from us, all this loss, all this battle, all this war. The liminality is like, okay, well, now that we have the space, the safety to grieve and mourn. We can actually process this, but we're not quite there yet. This allows us the space to see what we can expand into as a society, what we can expand into as individuals once we can have that moment. For me, like, the fact is that for me, if I could wake up tomorrow and not have to be scared about somebody shooting me on the street just because of the way I look, or because of my tattoos, or because I'm queer, or anything, is really something I would love to experience. But at the same time, we have to understand that we are moving towards a direction, right? Right now, we are in that liminal. I know we're talking about like the future. We're on that path towards future, right? But the future isn't one destination. There are multiple futures. There are multiple paths that we can take. What path is it that we want to take? Because where is it that we want to go? What is it that we want things to end up looking like at the end is something that we want to figure out now. I think, we don't want to figure out what does liberation look like when we're already there, because that means that we'll never get to that point if we're constantly like, well, what does it look like if we're there? We need a concept now for us to kind of give us some structure to look towards, to give us a road to move down, in my opinion.
Wait, you're gay? Are you serious? I can't even right now. I'm gonna have to leave. Excuse me, guys. I just can't do that.
I'll see myself out.
It's okay.
It's fine.
So sorry. Oh, them goddamn queer homosexuals again. No. Rye, what do you think? What does liberation look like in your idea?
Oh, so many great points.
Wait, don't tell me you're gay too.
Oh, me? Never. Oh my god. Part of the Alphabet Mafia?
Oh my god. No. No. Rye and I are the only straight ones on the show. So y'all can just see yourself out now.
I can't even pretend.
Continue. So sorry, Rye. When you said, what does liberation look like? I will cut all that. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I was just saying, everyone made really great points. And honestly, it's hard to even envision it because it just seems so idyllic, right? Like in a perfect world, what would it look like if fascism were just to disappear tomorrow? What would that liberation look like? And my mind, I think just because I was exposed to so many different intersectionalities throughout my training in grad school to become a therapist, I keep so many things in mind when it comes to like disability justice or multiculturalism and just all these different intersections. So it's like what does liberation look like for each of these things, in a after fascism ends? It's not just liberation looking like one thing. How do we still accomplish liberation for each of these marginalized and oppressed identities afterwards? There's still so much work to be done for people of all ages, abilities, identities afterwards. I don't know. I think that's my answer. I don't know what it would look like. I can't say I have an idea of how we would even get there. I mean, all I can think is that compassion would replace the hate that so much fills the world right now. That's what I would like to believe we would revolve around, is compassion. Because I think hate is a big reason that everything is so divisive right now. Just from fear-mongering, from misinformation, just from misunderstanding the world, each other. And I think just the lack of compassion needs to be resolved for us to be able to live in a very liberatory world. So yeah, just I think just a compassionate place is what a liberated place would look like. One where we can collectively come together and not just treat each other equally, but equitably. Because we can distribute things and treat things equally, but that doesn't necessarily mean everything's going to be equitable. So I would want to ensure that everyone's getting what they need and not just equal, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And it made me think about something. I'm going to go on a limb and say all of you are upper or middle to upper 20s, right? And I'm in my 30s. And our generation, like, has spent the majority of our life fighting for these rights and these privileges that we all deserve and all need. So when I think about what does liberation look like, personally, I think liberation is not mine to decide what that looks like. I think my generation is the fighting generation. We are meant to fight, and then the next generation gets to decide what that liberation looks like. What does true freedom and equity look like? And that's why it's important that we're teaching our kids the right things, that we're reaching out and making sure the next generation is well informed. This is the first time that a generation has witnessed a genocide play in real time before their eyes. And no matter what Israel is going to try to do to scrub the internet, they can't hide the fact that we have seen what we've seen and we can't unsee it. And so that next generation is going to have this, I want to say, we're definitely passing the torch. But I know this is going to sound like so much hopium. But I believe that the next generation is so aware of things like gay rights and trans rights and equity and disability rights. Like, these things for the next generation are like second nature to them. Sure, you get your young Republicans that say hateful racist shit like I love Hitler all the time. But you also get more who are like, I don't give a shit. I just don't want you treated poorly. And so our generation is the fighting generation. But their generation will be the ones that actually build what society can, it will fix it. That's just my thoughts, though.
I also just want to say the younger generation also has no problem swinging on a motherfucker, versus our generation, for some reason, has a hesitancy. They give no fucks. So props to them for that. I just want to tell them, if any of them are listening, I love you for that. Yes, get shit done. Throat punch a fucking Nazi. Yes. 1000%. But I did want to kind of just take one step backward really quick, and I couldn't help but think about this when we were all kind of saying it, is this verse from the Tao Te Ching. This one's specifically from the translation by Derek Lin, is that, and I quote, "We say that they are treated as if in a funeral. Those who have been killed should be mourned with sadness. Victory in a war should be treated as a funeral," end quote. Like, I'll just leave it at that.
That's good. That's absolutely. I did want to make a joke, and you can cut this if you want to, but our generation, speak for yourself, Granny. At you, Lydian.
You know, I'll cut a bitch, okay? I'll cut a bitch. Don't fuck with a millennial, all right? The millennials still cut people. We might look old and decrepit because we pop every time we get out of bed in the morning now, but that don't mean we still can't scrap, all right? We will fucking scrap.
I love that.
Why would I cut that? That is amazing. That's gold. That's so gold. I am old. I am so old. I just turned 173. And so it's just been one of those things where, like, you just accept your mortality. And the devil, he's calling me home, man. I don't know what it is, but he's just been like, it's time to go home. And I'm like, but bitch, we got to fight the fascists. And he's like,
173 is so young, though.
I know. 173. I'm experiencing twink death as we speak. That said, I want to just do a little bit of a pivot. I'm not going to do a hard cut per se, but let's talk about... we at the show, we love to leave you listeners with a little tasty morsel of bread to take with you on the way, from our kitchen to yours. And I think Sebastian might have been cooking up a recipe for you that you might want to indulge in. So Sebastian, what did you, based on everything that we've been talking about today, and Rye, feel free to add your own sprinkles of salt and pepper or whatever the fuck you want to add into this. But what have you been cooking up for us, Chef Sebastian?
Absolutely. So with the concept of this week's episode being on the road ahead, this is not a road opener, as I talk about it way too much. But let's talk about travel protection. That is going to be today's concept. What that can look like, what different methods are. If you've know about me and you've followed me on Instagram, you know that I love a talisman. That's going to be my go-to. A good, simple paper talisman can really do wonders. So that's going to be one of the ways that I like to do travel protection. But, Rye, I wanted to see if you have any go-tos for travel protection, any tips or tricks for travel protection in general, maybe any psalms for travel protection, anything like that.
Yeah, the only psalm I have, emblazoned in my memory is Psalm 23, which I use for everything, mainly protection, but protection in all cases. I also have a prayer card of Archangel Michael in the visor of my card, but it's a relic card, so it was touched to one of the stones from his cave that he had an apparition in. So I always touch that when I'm driving, especially going on the freeway. And just I pray to Archangel Raphael a lot for travel, because I think he's also a patron of traveling as well. But the only
Sure
actual
is.
talisman that I have in my cars is the prayer card of or I have a chaplet to Archangel Michael that I hang on my rearview mirror, and then I also have the prayer card that's a relic. And then those are my main go-tos. I'm trying to remember if I have anything else placed in my car. I have a cinnamon broom, which I usually use for the scent, but can also be used for protection.
Not to hard pivot, but does anybody else find that when you're traveling with normies, that say you get a really good parking spot, and they're like, how is it every time we hang out with you, you always get the fucking good parking spots and shit? It's bitch, I'm a witch. What the fuck do you expect? There's a horseshoe implanted up my ass that Satan put there himself. Okay, what do you want me to do? And I find that that's quite interesting. That you have the prayer card, because I have a chain that has a shit ton of different saint medals, and I'm just one of you are going to take care of me. One of you. Someone in this jingle jangle of chain is going to take care of me, and I'll pray to you. There you go.
I love that.
Not the Rolodex of saints.
I have a Rolodex of saints it is Rye's fault that I have a Rolodex of saints, because their fucking podcast told me about all the saints that you can work with, and that most of them are fine. So blame Rye if you're going to blame anybody for my Rolodex of saints.
I love that. No, yeah. So for me in my car, hanging from the dash or the rearview mirror is actually a air freshener that is the Santa Muerte in her black cloak, and I have jujued that up. So she's there, and then behind her is actually a travel protection talisman from Japan that my friend brought for me. And I have noticed that every time, I don't know exactly, but my running theory is that every time the bell rings, because it'll ring randomly, because it has two little bells on it, is it telling me that it's avoided me from having some kind of accident on the road. Because it really is pretty much silent all the time, and then suddenly it'll just jingle, and I'm what just happened? Something is going on. And then on the dash itself, on both sides, I have two talismans. One of them is from an old grimoire, which unfortunately I don't have the source for the grimoire, but if you can get your hands on a book called The Book of Charms and Talismans by Seth Fariol, it is page 100 and, 109, I think? 107. Maybe someone can recognize this if you guys do grimoire magic like I do. So I have this one for traveling, and it's to be made on a Monday at an hour of Mercury, I believe. Yeah, so, or actually it might be a lunar hour. But it's been wonderful, and then...
So we hold that up real quick. Let me have a good look at it real quick. All right, so to the listeners, what you see here is a circle, and inside of the circle is a square with the points up and to the sides, and then a circle inside of a circle with a bunch of random lines. So if you just draw a circle with a square inside of a circle, you're probably going to get it about right. There you go.
Yeah, and I'll probably post it, honestly, and so that way everyone can see it on my Instagram page. So
Absolutely.
So if you guys want to just head over to Instagram at Sebas_the_storm, I will post it there so you guys can see that, and then I'll put it on our Patreon for our listeners so they don't have to go scavenging for it. But with that being said, that one has worked wonders. And then on the opposite side of that, I have a talisman that I made, which is an interesting talisman because it almost has like this invisibility concept to it. So instead of it being invisible where like other cars don't see me and hit me, it's more like the cars are aware, other drivers are aware of my travel, or like me in general. And then but it's not to the point where like cops are gonna like really notice me, or like if I park somewhere I'm not supposed to, I'm gonna get towed because nobody can tell that my car is actually there. Is another method that I use. Herbs, for me personally, this is going to be what I've said before, is like build your relationship with your herbs. Mullein is good for me for travel, but I know that other people will take like rosemary or rue or mugwort, and those are all good travel ones as well. But I really like mullein for travel. Another one, if you want to go like pentacles, it's like the solar pentacles. Some of them are really good for getting you from one place to another. So there's been records of like that helping people like get through customs really easy, getting through certain kind of legal situations around travel. Considering the way things are going right now, utilizing every tool in your toolkit is a really good way to move.
Yes, you literally took get out of my head. You took the words right out of my mouth. It's the fact that we are like the road ahead. When we think about the road ahead at large, it is very much travel is going to be involved for a lot of people. It's moving from maybe a red state to a blue state. It's moving out of the country, and we don't blame you if you have to go. Take this little charm with you, though, in your travels. Is all we're saying.
1,000%. I mean, if we were to think of spirits to work with in this regard, in regards to travel, avian spirits, birds, work those spirits. People who traveled a lot in life. So if you go to like the grave of like someone well traveled, or somebody who was like who had to travel for work, like a pilot, or like oh my gosh, why can't I think of the word right now? A flight attendant or something like that, somebody who worked in airports, things like that. Or if you find the grave of somebody who was like one of the security or TSA agents, so that way you can get their TSA super easy, or customs really easy, utilizing the graves or spirits of those types of people really works. I mean, considering the legal aspect, I always recommend. Honestly, as a practitioner, why don't you have a lawyer's dirt in your arsenal at all times, especially with the way things are right now? Those are all spirits to work with. Other spirits, threshold spirits, are really good to be working right now. Of course, if we're talking travel, we're going to talk crossroads. So crossroads spirits, 10,000%. You have your pick of which crossroad spirits you want to go down that road. No pun intended, actually pun intended. And work that way as well. If we're going to do, carry the Chariot tarot card with you. Write a psalm on there. Write an incantation, write a sigil on the tarot card itself, and then keep that with you in your back pocket. Keep it with you in your briefcase, in your suitcase, in your car. Stuff like that is all things that you can work as well.
You said dirt. We witches love our jar of dirts. Let's just accept it. Get some dirt in your life, but utilizing the sigils, the tarot cards, talismans in general are going to be probably your best bet because they are tangible. They're prayers just as fine. I would say if you wanted to, Hecate. That was I was going to suggest. Hecate, praying to Hecate. Both her epithets of Enodia, which is the opener of the ways, but Propylaea is the opener of the gate. So if you need to do a opening to get out, Propylaea, and then Enodia, guide me along the path. That's just if you work with that kind of specific... We mentioned Crossroads, and the Queen of the Crossroads, obviously. She is mother of those things. I don't know. Does anybody have any last thoughts?
I do. I have one more thing to include. What's been coming up for me recently, and this is something that my dad shared with me about his migration from Mexico to the United States. He prayed to La Virgen de San Juan, a specific apparition nearby from where my family's from. And she kept him safe while he was traveling, doing things that were not exactly above board to get here. And yeah, there's more to that, but I'll share that after we're done with the public part.
Yeah.
And one last thing before we kind of move forward is I just want to let y'all know, listeners, you're going to want to join us on Patreon because I'm actually going to upload one of my favorite travel talismans that has been tried and true. I posted about it the other day. It has prevented some like Final Destination level as travel emergencies before. So if you guys want to hear about that story, join the Patreon so you can hear the after show, and then join the Patreon so you can actually see the whole talisman and how to make it, and so that way you can have that for your arsenal.
This has been the Ember Report, where resistance is witchy and spells are not optional. I'm Lydian, the voice in the flame.
I'm Len, the Witch of the Crossroads.
I'm Sebastian, the Sorcerer of Annihilation.
And I'm Rye, the Mestizo
That's
Mystic.
you, Rye. Absolutely.
If today's fire stirred something in you, share it. Cast it wide.
If you'd like to linger a while, there's always tea on the stove, a place in the Resistance, and room at our table.
And we will be carrying this ember over, as Sebastian has said, to our after show Ashes and Sparks, where for $1 a month you can join us and our conversation with Rye and many others. And yeah, that's always a good time. That said, until next time...
May our rage spark resistance.
May our grief become fire.
May our magic be sharp and unrepentant.
The lantern is lit.
You're still out there.
And so are we.